Hey guys, Kadroth here. Today I'm going to talk to you guys about the 12 million downloads campaign that'll be coming up here in November. And you might think this is a little bit too early for this, but I wanted to give you guys some perspective and maybe help you make some choices for the future, especially with Christmas Lotto coming up. I know I've had a lot of questions about that. Whenever I do account reviews, people tend to ask me, hey Cad, what should I pick for the 4-star ticket? So I'm going to go through this with you guys and address every single one of these. So on JP, this was the 15 million downloads campaign. And right now, let's talk about the timing of NA. NA is actually a little bit ahead. I'm expecting Oniland to start on the 20th, just because we're going to have a dead week right here after Halloween for the interlude campaign that's coming. And that should give people time to catch up for Oniland as well. So I think we'll probably have the download campaign a little bit earlier than JP had it, but not a lot. They're probably trying to keep us ahead due to us having a Thanksgiving banner and everything. So you guys can expect this coming a tad bit sooner, and that's the reason for this video coming sooner as well. Now, I'm not going to talk about everything in the 15 million downloads campaign banner. There's a lot of stuff, particularly the most important things are the fact that this is the return of Abigail. This is going to be her last banner for the time being. Everything after this is just a lucky bag, aka GSSR. You don't have any other guaranteed way of getting her, so if you guys want her, you got to make sure you get her now. One of the other big things that they're going to have here is Chaldea Tea Time. That is a really good CE. You guys can't see it right here, but on this page you'll see it is 5% bond points gained when you use it, but 15% when a friend support uses it. So this is going to get you guys a lot of FP in the long run. This is going to be a very meta CE for supports. You really want to make sure you get this, so save up your mana prisms. You should have a bunch coming off the back of the lotto. Just make sure you're prepared to get this. You don't want to end up missing this and then having to pay another rare prism to get it out of the shop later. We're also going to be getting the new 5-star experience cards in the friend point gacha. I've heard a lot of people say like, oh man, I'm gonna save my FP for this. You can just understand that, remember, you're only going to get 2 times super and great success chance during this event. You will get 3 times if you wait for anniversary to do it. So most of you guys probably spent a lot there, but maybe you have a bunch again from the boxes that you open. So it's okay if you want to spend some here. 2 times success chance is pretty good. We'll probably get it again at New Year's if I had to bet, but probably better to spend it now while you're not in the middle of a lotto or not in the middle of the New Year's event that's going to be coming up. 5-star experience cards are going to be really nice for leveling people up. Just understand when you're rolling the FP gacha, it's going to be completely random. You could get the all embers, you could get lancer embers, you could get archer embers. It doesn't matter. There are 5-star variants of each of these, and they do provide, I think, 100k experience for using it on the correct class. We should also be able to expect a whole bunch of other rewards like this retweet campaign, a login bonus, and everything else. But again, like I said, I'm not going to go too in depth on them. Just understand you're going to be getting a lot of good stuff in this download campaign when it happens. So instead, the big thing we're going to talk about today is the 4-star ticket. This is going to be the thing that everyone's going to be excited about. You guys are going to get a free 4-star for logging in during the download campaign, so make sure you're playing during this time. And we're going to go over here in this video what you should kind of look at, who you should target, and why. So there's a bunch of schools of thought as to how to choose your 4-star. A lot of people will just go after waifus or husbandos. Some people will go after what works best for their account, and other people will try to, maybe they've gotcha'd a lot and they have a lot of these units already, so maybe they'll go after some of the rarer ones like the story locks. That's actually something you'll see me do a lot because I do whale on NA, so I have pretty much every single one of these units. In fact, I think the only one I don't have at the moment is Edison. So I'm not going to go through each one of these individually, but I am going to talk to you guys about how I kind of feel about each one briefly, and we're just going to kind of start going through the list. I'll mention the specifics that you maybe need to know about them and why you might want to pick them. It's up to you guys to decide which one of those schools you fall into and who is most desirable to you. So starting with the Sabers, if we're looking at AoE potential, I really like Salter. I think she's probably your hardest hitting choice here. She does have a buff coming on JP that's going to give her 20% charge in her kit on top of the 10% she already gets on the back refund of her NP. You've also got the fact that she is story locked and gives charisma to the party. So those are other considerations that you might want. If you need that hard hitting AoE, she's going to be your choice. You've also got another one in Gawain who is story locked as well, does give charge, and has a buff coming that's going to make him able to apply the sunlight field bonus to every single field he's on. So that's really nice for him because he will start hitting harder always as well, and it's a nice boost. He's not going to outpace Salter, but maybe for story considerations, if you already had an NP5 Salter, he'd be another pickup. And then for the last one in the story lock category, you've also got Umu down here, who get banners from time to time, but I think she had a dearth of them here for a while on JP, and I want to say she's in the 16 million downloads campaign with Nero Bride. If you want to pick up Umu, this might be a good opportunity to do so. She's got some nice buffs coming too, as well, adding the ability to deal more damage on waterside and city fields, so she can be really nice as well. The one reason I won't rank her as high gameplay wise is just Imperial Privilege, but you can do things to mitigate the chance of failure on Imperial Privilege proc, and if you do, it's going to make her really, really strong. Other considerations here for the AoE category are going to be Sumanai, aka Siegfried, and Suzuka Gozen. So they are really, really nice. Both of them have their advantages. Sumanai, while he is permanent, hits really hard and has anti-dragon bonus for him. Suzuka, on her hand, has charge per turn, so depending on what you need, it may be worth it for you to pick up one of these. Now in the single target category, we have 4 options. We have Diarmid, who just came into the game. We have Yagyu, who is story locked. We have Rama, who is anti-demon, and we have Lancelot, who is a crit fiend. Which one of these you end up picking is up to you. Diarmid's relatively new, so a lot of people probably won't have him still unless they rolled on the Fate Zero banner, so they might want to pick him up, but he is permanent. Yagyu, on the other hand, is story locked, really good single target art, and has survivability that Lancelot lacks, so maybe you want to go with Yagyu. Lancelot, on the other hand, is just, like I said, a crit fiend. He's one of the most all-encompassing units in the game and just doesn't really need anyone else to perform well, because he can both generate stars, soak stars, and crit harder with the stars. Or maybe you just want to go with Rama because you need that anti-demonic bonus and those hard crits as well, but in Rama's case, you're going to have to find a way to provide him stars, so it's up to you which one of these you want to pick. And the last honorable mention I'll give here is to Daeon, not to be left out. For most of you guys, you probably don't need a tank, you don't need a taunter, but the one thing I will say is pay attention for Lost Belt 4 coming in the future, where there's a very annoying fight that really one of the better strategies for a lot of people is to abuse a whole lot of taunters in their team. So it's up to you if you need that. If you have taunt craft essences, you might not. If you have a whole bunch of other taunters, you might not, but maybe if you're bereft, this is something to look out for. Now for the archers, there's only 2 real options at AoE, and that's Emiya and Atalanta. Atalanta is going to be your quick looper, so if you have Scotty, she's actually going to be probably pretty useful for you coming up at Christmas as well, because there is a Saber node. However, it's probably going to take a decent amount of NP levels. If you don't have her, sure, you can pick her up to get the ball rolling, but she'd be a consideration for making a stronger case here if you needed a higher NP level to get the job done. Maybe you only had NP 1 before. And then there's Emiya over here, who, as we know now, has an arts NP as of his buff on JP, or at least he can change from Buster to arts, so he can be kind of a looper depending on what you need, but that's still way in the future. So for right now in NA, he's mostly going to be your decent workman-like AoE that's going to hit hard for you and be Buster. For our single targets, we have 4 options. That is Tomoe, Demia, Chiron, and Tristan. So here's what I like about each of them. Tomoe has an NP buff on JP, where she now deals, I think it's the 3rd most damage out of all the single target archers, so she's actually in a pretty good spot on JP. As of right now, she's going to primarily just be your Buster single target. She's got a good kit. She's got guts, star soaking, and attack up and NP damage up, so it's a really nice kit for her. For Demia, Demia is actually the hardest hitting, both on NA and JP right now, and it's actually a little bit insane. Part of this is due to the NP buff that he just got here at the anniversary on NA, and he is story locked, so he's going to be a much harder person to get your hands on. However, I will tell you, be very careful of Demia's end mats. He does take gallstones and shells. I have no idea why. I have no idea why Delightworks decided they were going to do that. So if you plan on getting your Demia and investing in him heavily, that's fine, but just be aware that his 8 and 9 rank is going to be really, really hard on some people. Chiron is more of your art support. He does give crit up to the entire party. He does give all card type up, so he's almost a little bit like Helena in that sense, but as a archer. But he is single target. His NP damage is a little bit lackluster. So like I said, most of you are going to be using him for that support category, but I have found him to be highly useful at certain times on JP. He was one of the only archers I had, and he did pull through for me at times, and he does still have survivability in this kit as well. And then there's Tristan for the last one, who has no damage steroid of his own. He is a quick archer, but he's kind of like the 4-star quick version of David. He gives the party-wide one-time dodge to the entire party, and then on top of that, he has a 50% charge. So he can actually be really nice with a Scotty comp. Just pay in mind the fact that he will, on that charge, NP seal himself for 1 turn, so you can't charge on the same turn you would want to NP with him unless you have a cleanse. So just keep that in mind, but I do really like him for both survivability and just overall damage with Scotty. It's also worth mentioning that Tristan is story locked, so he's another one that you guys are going to have a hard time getting your hands on. Next up are going to be the Lancers. Now, we have several options for AoE here. We have Lalter, we have Liz Lancer, and we have Nezha and Parvati and Fionn and the Valkyries. This is overwhelmingly skewed towards the AoE category. So because of that, let's start talking about the single targets first. So the single target Lancers are going to be a choose your own card color option here at this point, because Vlad is going to be your Buster, Li Shuin is going to be your arts, and Medusa Lily is going to be your quick. So for that right there, that might be your consideration. There's also Li Shuin, who is story locked. I really like his kit. He is going to be your art centric one, like I talked about. He does have 100% crit in his kit, and he does have invuln, pierce, and sure hit. So he is really nice at tearing through whatever defense the enemy has. However, he is kind of a one and done servant. You've got Vlad, who's rather tanky and has all the survivability tools that he needs. His damage is going to be a little bit lackluster though, unless you're targeting one of his niches, which is evil. And evil is encompassing a lot of characters and enemies in the game, so it is a very wide niche. It does help him out at a lot of times, but if he's your only Lancer option for single target and you don't have an evil enemy, you're going to find his performance a little bit lackluster, I think. And then there's Medusa Lily, who has both stun and charm in her kit, so she's actually really nice for that, and she can kind of loop at times as well with Scotty. So depending on what you're looking for, Medusa Lily might be really good for you. Like I said, each one of these has its own benefits, its own demerits. Just pick the one that would work best for you. Now, on the AoE Lancers, like we talked about, Lalter is both story lock, already the hardest to get right here. All the other ones are permanent in this list. Lalter gets a special consideration for this. She also hits exceedingly hard, up at the levels of almost Karna at that point. So if you're looking for NP damage, she's your girl. She also has insane crits and has one of the best crit abilities in the game that both generates, soaks, and helps you crit harder with your stars. It's a really, really nice all-encompassing skill, and for that reason, she is sort of a crit monster at times. I really do like her. If you're just needing raw output, she's your girl. The other considerations here are Ellie, if you had nothing else to choose from, at least gives sadistic charisma, which is a bonus charisma to females, so she can be a really nice one to use. Nezha's kind of the odd man out right now. She really needs a lot of love on JP. She needs something, literally anything, I think. At this point, I'm going to tell you that she's not the one I'm going to advise for you. As for our loopers here, now we kind of get into this category of these three, and I know probably some of you are chuckling at the fact that I included Fionn in that group. The one thing I will say is that the big discussion is probably going to be between Parvati and the Valks. Fionn is going to be your arts looper. He is going to get pretty much outclassed by the time Melt Lancer comes out next summer. It's up to you if you guys want to focus on that, but he actually does have a fairly good niche coming up at the New Year's event. There is a male only node, and he is actually one of the best solutions for it, because the male only node only allows you to take males in, and it's all against archer enemies. It's going to be either him or Karna that you're going to have to use pretty much if you want to do it. However, I have seen people be like, oh, that node sucks, it's a shame you have to do it. You don't really have to do it. You can run it the one time and then focus your efforts elsewhere if that node is really bad for you. But for those of them that can, they're going to probably try to go in there with Paracelsus, Waver, and Fionn and try to loop through it. So that will be an option for some people. And then, like I said, the difference here that we're going to have is Parvati and the Valks. They each have their own unique benefits, but they're very, very similar in performance. They're both AoE quick loopers. They're both permanent. So what's the advantage of each? So the Valkyries are kind of flat in terms of damage output going across across the board. So each wave they'll do the same amount of damage because they have a 3-turn quick up. That is both a blessing and a curse. That means that they will deal a little bit more damage than Parvati in the second wave, but less damage than Parvati in the third wave. So depending on the node, if you're maybe struggling with that second wave, the Valks might be the better option. If you're struggling with the final wave, Parvati is probably going to be the better option. And the reason for that is because while Parvati will be lower through the first 2 waves, Parvati will be higher in the third wave because she has a damage up increase. Now, truth be told, if it were really an issue, you could switch which turn you pop Parvati's damage buff in and move it to the second wave, but then you might be finding yourself lackluster for the third wave. But you can play around with it depending on whether or not you have arts cards to help you crit or not. Both of these are going to be highly recommended for Christmas. The end lotto node is archers. That is the node you guys are going to want to farm the most. It gives really good rate of return for your Apple use. So I highly recommend looking at these two. These two are going to be really highly emphasized for you guys to pick on this ticket because of that, especially if you can beef them up. I remember on JP, I was doing the node with an NP1 Valkyrie, and she was not quite enough to make the cut for the final wave unless I had crit cards. So I highly recommend maybe beefing up your Valkyrie or Parvati in preparation for that if you can. Get a higher NP level, make that node easier, make your farming easier, and make yourself a happy man or woman. So there's only 4 riders now in this category, of which 3 of them are AoE. So let's start with the single target. The single target are the Yuri Pirates, and they're relatively good for damage output. They're quick centric. The issue that you're going to have with them is their NP damage is dependent on the amount of health they have. It's inversely proportional. So the less health they have, the more damage they'll deal. And that is going to be a huge issue for you depending on how you want to use them. Unlike their archer counterpart though, they don't have guts in their kit, so it's actually really annoying trying to get them down to a low level without getting them killed. They can be used with Chen Gong and stuff later on down the line at any 4, and that is a consideration, but I'm going to tell you that they're probably not the one you want to go with as a result. They're also permanent, and odds are a lot of you already have them. Now coming back to the AoE options, you have Astolfo, you have Marie, and you have Martha. Let me talk about each. If you're just concerned with damage output, Astolfo is probably going to be your man. He's really nice in the fact that he's almost a 4-star quick version of Drake. He has a 50% charge in his kit now, which is really solid. And as you guys know, if you do happen to have an MLB K-scope and 3 50% chargers that you can bring, including the support, you can actually force anyone with 50% charge to loop. That's actually a really good thing for him. However, I think the issue you guys are probably going to have at that point is going to be the damage output, and so it's just going to depend on how much you can pump out with him. But there is an Astolfo comp actually for Christmas, so that's another thing to consider for you. Again, looking at Marie is actually really nice. She's a very tanky, survivable rider, but I'm probably not going to recommend most of you take her unless you need that sort of thing. She can actually loop. A lot of people don't know this, and she doesn't have any steroid in her kit, so she loops without any external help other than the Scotty quick ups. However, the issue then at play is going to be how high of health are the enemies that are going to allow her to loop. So she can loop stuff like doors, but can she loop a much harder node? Probably not, and it's probably going to have to be against casters. And there is, like I said, a caster node at Christmas, but I wouldn't recommend Marie for that node. I'd recommend some other options, including something like Achilles or Surfmo at that point. Dealing with Martha is both a medium tier AoE in terms of overall damage, but she does get a defense down. She does get a buff strip down the line, and she does also have party cleanse. That makes her way more useful in niche scenarios where you really need that party cleanse because of a turn 1 debuff of a boss fight or something like that. That makes Martha really nice to have out and just be able to use. She was actually super useful for me in Lost Belt 5.2 because of that, so it just depends on what you're dealing with. Okay, and now we get into the casters. The ones I definitely am going to recommend to you guys are going to be Helena, Nitocris, maybe Caskill, maybe Cersei, depending on what you need here. And there's a couple of reasons why I'm going to talk about that. And I'll come back through and talk about each one. But Helena is actually the highest AoE in this category in terms of overall damage output. A lot of people don't realize that. They look at Helena's kit and they see a pseudo support, maybe almost a 4-star version of Waver, less charge, but the ability to buff everybody. That's a a lot of things. Like I said, she still is very good for that use, and it's one of the reasons I'll actually tell you guys she's still a useful pickup almost no matter what. Even if you already have her, maybe getting an extra NP level of her will actually really help you out in terms of damage output, because her damage output's great. However, that middle skill is just like using Da Vinci or even like Tesla or someone like that. It's random. It has a chance to fail, and I think even if you have the skill at rank 10, it's still only an 80% chance. So there's no guarantee unless you bring buff support success. I do really like her for that, but you're gonna have to deal with that as a result. Caskill is gonna be your art support. Unfortunately, while a lot of people really like Caskill, I'm gonna tell you that your focus needs to be on Tamamo coming up here at New Year's. She gets her buff to her first skill, and that does make her outpace Caskill for support damage output. Caskill, on the other hand, has a damage dealing NP, so that's his use. He can buff the party, make them generate more stars, which is an insane thing for an arts comp, and also take out a wave. So that's another good thing for him. Same thing as Helena, just not as much damage output. And then you have Nitocris. Nitocris is one of the best farmers in the entire game because a lot of what she does is dependent on both her 100% charge skill and the fact that she can death proc a lot of trash farming mobs. It allows her to just kind of overpower certain nodes regardless of her damage output. I've seen people say at NP1 she doesn't deal a lot of damage, but trust me, she is still really solid at NP1, and I've actually used her to great success even here recently in the hunting quests on JP. As for some of our other casters here, we've got Cersei and Caster of Midrash. Both of them are our single target options. Keep in mind, guys, at Oniland, you guys are going to get Caster Shootin'. If you're referencing this as the 4-star tickets coming up, you will already have her. You guys will note that Caster Shootin's damage output is going to far exceed either of these two options. So because of that, I'm going to recommend Cersei if anybody, because what Cersei has is just like Nitocris, like we were talking about before. She has 100% charge in her kit. She can also poison all the enemies and is just overall a really useful unit. Midrash, on the other hand, is story locked. So if you really haven't gotten your hands on her, I think the only other time to date that you guys possibly can upcoming here on NA is going to be the Ivan banner in the early part of next year. So keep that in mind. She does not come back on the Guildfest rerun. So if you really want a Caster of Midrash, she is story locked. This is one of the ways to get it. We have Edison and we have Nursery Rhyme. Both of them are very low damage. What Edison has in his kit that's really nice is the overcharge gimmick that is going to allow him or someone else potentially more NP damage. It depends on what the overcharge effect of the NP is. Maybe you're just wanting to strengthen their overcharge effect to, say, generate more stars like in Raiko's case or something like that. And then we have Nursery Rhyme, and Nursery Rhyme has 40% charge in her kit as well as AoE drain, and that can actually be super useful depending on what you're looking at. I've actually used Nursery Rhyme to just kind of cheese certain gauntlet style challenge quests, especially if there's like a damage bonus CE or something in there. You can just waltz in there, make your Nursery Rhyme actually hit decently hard, and just prevent the enemy from ever getting an NP off if you're sitting there managing to kind of loop her. The deal Lily is actually going to be your kind of devoted healer for a lot of you guys that don't have it. She's again got the same sort of gimmick as Cersei and Nitocris, where she can charge up to 100%. She will heal a good solid amount depending on the NP level that you guys have, and again, I think she's a highly worth unit if you have no healer. Odds are though most of you guys have Iris Veil. Odds are most of you guys can take a support, so you'd have to be in a really niche situation. But the good news is here is she is story locked, so there is another reason to pick Medea Lily over, say, someone else. Now we get down to the bottom of the list here, and the assassins are not ones that I'm overall high on, but let's talk about the single targets first. So we have Emiya, we have Carmilla, we have Shinjuku Assassin, and we have Wu. Each one of these has their own benefits again. Emiya is going to be your art single target. He does have Invuln Pierce, so he can be good for that. Overall, I think though, a lot of people find that his NP gain is a little bit lackluster, and that's one of those where you're gonna have to use his taunt skill creatively. Maybe try to get people to attack him. I think a lot of you guys probably noticed that in the Fate Zero event, where he was really useful on a lot of the bug nodes, and the bugs had a lot of attacks, so you could actually taunt himself with the Scapegoat ability and make them attack him and basically charge his NP a lot faster. Again, that's probably going to be the downside to using him. Carmilla is Buster single target. Carmilla is anti-female, and Carmilla is a vampire, so she can drain. So for her, I actually like her probably much more as our single target option here if you have nothing else to go with. She's got a really nice niche, and again, just will function overall at a high level. Shinjuku Assassin does get his quick up buff, but I just have found overall he's very lackluster. His primary gimmick is star control, both increasing the amount of stars generated as well as decreasing the amount of soaking that someone might do, or increasing the amount. So a lot of his skills depend on that, and for that reason alone, I just really don't recommend him for most people. Wu, on the other hand, I really like. Wu is actually a pseudo quick buffer, as well as she has gotten a lot of attention on JP and hits like a truck at this point. However, she is dependent on her Imperial privilege, so just keeping that in mind, you might struggle with her at certain times. But again, she's probably one of the better options to take here along with Carmilla. And then you've got Chiome last. I really don't recommend Chiome at the current point. She is art, but unfortunately, she's more of like a curse gimmick. They actually have put some fights into the game later on that kind of showcase that, but really for a lot of people, I think you guys are going to find her to just not be comparable in terms of damage output. Coming over here to talk about Sathino. Sathino's real niche is in charm locking the enemy, death procking at times with her NP. It's really odd, as well as being able to buff divine allies. So that's kind of going to be her big thing, kind of like Lancer Ellie centers around buffing other females. Sathino is going to center around buffing other divine units. So depending on what you need, that's going to be your big niche. I really don't recommend most people take her though. And then for AoE, our only option here is going to be Kato Danzo. Her NP damage is overall not the greatest, but she might be better as another option for you if your only option prior to this point was Fuma. Again, you will be getting Gray next year as another welfare, so that's something to consider. The thing that I'm going to point out with Kato Danzo is that she's actually really good for survivability. She gives both a one-time evasion and one-time invuln to targets, so that can be really useful as a utility depending on what you need. Now we get down in here into the Berserkers. I really like Atalanta because she's sort of a 4-star version of MHXA. She is your single target quick looper. A lot of you guys will look at her kit and see the same kind of quick skill as her archer variant. She does give 50% quick up for 1 turn to the entire party, but again, you're primarily going to be using that for her, but she can be used to buff as well. We've also got Ibaraki. I'm not too high on Ibaraki. Her damage output's great, but the thing that I dislike about her for the most part is the lack of a hard survival skill. And what I mean by hard survival skills, I'm talking about a dodge, a invuln, or a guts. Something that cannot just be normally overridden like defense and cleanse can in her kit. Then you've also got Penth. I think Penth is one of your best single target options here. The reason being is she has a charge skill that operates on a 3-turn basis that gives 20% charge per turn at rank 10. That means over the course of 3 turns, although it happens at the end of the turn, she's going to get 60% charge. So in a true 3-turn environment, she's only going to get 40% because you're going to be waiting until the end of the turn. But again, that can be highly useful. On top of that, she's also a very good buster support, and the fact that she gives buster up to the entire party and charisma to the entire party. And then on top of that, she also has a niche against anti-Greek males. And gee, it's really funny because it's almost like there's a Lost Belt coming up that deals with Greek males. Then we've got Tamamo Cat here. Tamamo Cat is kind of falling behind some of the other variants, both because she just doesn't actually deal the same damage as, say, a Fran, or because she doesn't quite loop like a Lancelot. So it just depends on what you need. Now, obviously, a lot of you guys are going to roll Tamamo Cat anyways, just for waifu purposes, but she is in a much better spot, at least on NA, now that she has her debuff immunity. So that means she won't stun herself as long as you've done her rank up for that. Talking about Fran, Fran has 2 really good uses. One is the fact that she is just overall a hard hitter. The other fact is that she will actually be able to loop if you have 2 things. One is an MLB K-scope. The other thing is obviously going to be double Scotty. So 3 things, I guess. And then the third thing that she's going to need some sort of debuff immunity. You can get that by virtue of Nightingale with her buff, or you can get that by virtue of BB. Yes, the original BB, not Summer BB. So 4-star BB welfare can give a debuff cleanse as well as a debuff immunity for 1 time, and so both of them can actually allow Fran to loop and therefore make it all the way to the 3rd wave and blow her load. That can make Fran really versatile and really useful, but even if you can't loop with her, Fran still deals really top tier damage, especially against 1 target. So I think a lot of people discount Fran for that reason. They just see the stun on her NP and they don't understand how good she can actually be. Beowulf is going to be a rising star a little bit. He's always been known for his one-shot single target damage. However, he is going to get that skill on his intuition skill that's going to make it a lot like Lalter's, where it generates a lot of stars it soaks the stars and it helps him crit harder with the stars. So it's a really, really nice skill. And a lot of you might be thinking, oh crap, it's a berserker, he's not going to soak the stars. His variant of the skill is even stronger than Lalter's when it comes to the star soaking, so he's very good for that. And then obviously looking at Herc, the quote-unquote elephant in the room, Herc is a really solid unit for a lot of you guys, especially if you can manage to get him to bond 10 and 10 10 10, because he is going to become really, really tanky. His recent buff on JP made his guts stack actually with his bond CE, so he's even more of a monster now. However, a lot of people I think overestimate his damage output right now on NA. On JP, he's getting there now thanks to that buff, because every single time his guts procs, he gets a buster up. So it's really, really good and really useful. But again, I do think he's a solid unit to have, especially if you have no one else. Sometimes you just need that cockroach, that character that won't die very easily, and Herc can fill that role for you. Looking at Lancelot, he needs no other introduction for those of you guys that have been playing. You guys know he is one of the premier Scotty loopers, and he is going to be someone that almost everyone should consider on this ticket unless they already have a high NP level of him. He will be highly sought after and highly useful at Christmas again. Same sort of deal as at Gilfest, so you guys know for the prime farming opportunities, this can be your way of making it really easy on you. Coming in here to the last two, we've got Gorgon and Lobo. These are the only extra classes in the 4-star ticket, and it's because they are both story locked and permanent respectively. Because of that, you've got the consideration of Gorgon being story locked. That might be a reason to take her, maybe just for waifu purposes for some of you guys. But for gameplay wise, I really can't advocate for Gorgon. The main reason is the game doesn't incentivize AoE Avengers unless they're loopers like Dante's or Space Ishtar later, or even Salieri. AoE Avengers are kind of caught out because the game doesn't have enough nodes where it's like, oh man, here's a ruler in the node with some berserkers, or oh man, here's a all ruler node or something like that. The game just doesn't play to that. That's a little bit on Delightworks. It's not so much a reflection of the character itself. Delightworks just kind of needs to actually work that sort of stuff in so that you have more often uses for your extra classes. Given that, my recommendation is actually going to be Lobo. You guys are probably going to want a single target Avenger, especially coming up here at Lost Belt 3, where there is at least one annoying ruler boss. However, I'm going to tell you guys that Jalter is far and away the better solution for that boss. But Lobo can still operate for you. He is single target quick, so you can combine him with Scotty for some pretty nutso damage output. It's just going to depend on what you guys need when considering taking one of these two. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope this helps you guys figure out your 4-star ticket. I just wanted to provide my thoughts on some of these units and kind of where we're heading. Again, remember, we're going to get a lot of welfares coming up, so just keep that in mind when you're considering your choices. Also, make sure you guys pay attention to Christmas. I am going to be getting the guides out, but you guys can do a little bit of homework on your end and go look at what some of those nodes are, and that'll help you make your choices. So again, thank you for watching, guys. If you guys haven't already, be sure to check me out on Twitch, where I stream weeknights at 7 p.m. and be sure to join the Discord. I'll put the link in the description below, but make sure you guys assign a role, otherwise the server will kick you. So have a good day, and may the courts be with you.